Edith Wharton once said, "Each time you happen to me all over again." What would you do if you had the pressures of New York society weighing on you every day? What would you do if your husband expected you to constantly embody the perfect woman and be the perfect wife? My name is Jali Chandler, and for my independent study novel, I chose Edith Wharton's The Age of Innocence. I was born and raised in Bossier City, Louisiana. I started dancing at the age of 2 and haven't stopped since. My dream has certainly evolved since then, though. I first dreamed of Broadway, then Juilliard, and now I intend to get my master's in dance and go on to own my own dance company and studio. I've been to New York 4 times, and every time it feels more and more like home. So when it came time to choose my senior project novel, I knew I wanted one set in the Big Apple. Another reason I chose this novel is because as a high school student, I can identify and relate to being in love and having the pressures of societal norms to fit in. I needed to have a book that I related to because I dance and teach about 40 hours a week at my home studio. But even with going to the studio at 1 and getting home around 9:30, once I started the book, I couldn't stop. I wanted a different book, something no one else would choose. And this was it. Even Mrs. Stevenson hadn't read this one. But I can tell you one thing greater. I will never, never forget The Age of Innocence. Born and raised in New York City, Edith Wharton moved to Europe at only 4 years old. She invented stories for her family constantly, but later in life put aside writing for her duties as a debutante. Eventually, she crossed the Atlantic 60 times, and her husband both loved to travel. The Age of Innocence won the 1921 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, making Wharton the first woman to win the prize, though the committee had agreed to award the prize to a well-known author, Lewis. The judges rejected his Main Street on political grounds and established Wharton as the American First Lady of Letters. The irony being that the committee had awarded The Age of Innocence the prize because it blatantly negated Wharton's own subtle ironies, which constitute and make the book so worthy of the attention. The novel is noted for Wharton's attention to detail and its accurate portrayal of the 19th century societal tragedy following its own plot. The Age of Innocence was one of Edith Wharton's softer and more gentler works, much softer than The House of Mirth, which is one of her other books. She wrote The Age of Innocence because it had allowed her to find a momentary escape in going back to her childhood, memories of a long-vanished America. She had spent her middle years, including the whole of World War I, in Europe, where the devastation of a new kind of warfare was felt most deeply. The Age of Innocence was written after Roosevelt's death and in the immediate wake of World War I. Wharton was 58 years old at publication, and she had lived in that world and had seen it change dramatically by the end of World War I. The novel was first released in Pictorial Review magazine in the 1920s, and then later released by D. Appleton and Company as a book in New York and in London. She was raised in the proper New York society and pulled from her warfare devastations of her experiences into her novels. The story is set in upper class in New York, much like how she was raised. and it was in the 1870s during the Gilded Age. She had already established herself as a strong author when this was published, and publishers were wanting and actively looking for her work. May Willard is Newland Archer's fiancée and then wife in the novel. She is raised to be a perfect wife and mother, and she follows and perfectly obeys all of these societal customs. Mostly, she is the shallow, uninterested, and uninteresting young woman that New York society requires. When they are in St. Augustine in the novel, though, May gives Newland a rare glimpse of this maturity and compassion that he had previously ignored. She offers to let them cut off the engagement so that he can marry the woman he truly loves, thinking that he wants to be with Mrs. Rushworth, a married woman with whom he had recently ended a love affair, when he assures May that he loves only her. Well, May appears to trust him, at least at first. Yet after their marriage, she suspects that Newland is Ellen's lover, which is her cousin. Nonetheless, May pretends to be happy before society, maintaining this perfect illusion that she has this perfect marriage expected of the society. Her unhappiness activates her manipulative nature, and Newland doesn't see it until it's too late. To drive Ellen away from him, May tells Ellen of her pregnancy before she is even certain that she is pregnant. Yet there is still some compassion in May, even in their loveless marriage long years after Ellen's leaving. After May dies, Newland learns she had always known for his continued love for Ellen. As May lay dying, she told their son that the children could always trust their father, because he surrendered the thing most meaningful to him out of loyalty for their marriage. May is the true picture of innocence. One of the most prominent themes that can be seen throughout the text is the idea of wealth and social class. The characters take pride in their social standings, and those that come from old money feel threatened by those who are coming from new money. The characters' lives revolve around staying up to date on the latest fashion and appearances, and being accepted into this high society is the most important thing to the people in this novel, and they're willing to do just about anything to be accepted. Being accepted by high-class acquaintances is another common theme that is displayed throughout the novel. Another theme that is clear in the novel is love, whether it be the love between Newland Archer and May Willard, or the undeniable love and lust between Newland Archer and Ellen Olenska. Newland Archer's infatuation with May Willard's innocence can't be missed in the beginning scenes of the novel. The theme innocence changes throughout the novel as May states she is pregnant, only to ensure that Ellen stays away from Newland. It is explained in the critical reception of Edith Wharton that critics have always admired Wharton's craftsmanship, her attention to detail and structure, and her subtle ironies, along with her description of interiors attributed to her time as an interior designer. In the decades since the book's publication, critics have placed more stress on the portrayal of the money and the class distinctions in the novel. And both the money and the class distinctions are both very modern concepts. The pressures of society still exist. Feeling the pressures to be perfect definitely exists. In especially high school atmospheres when social norms are such a big part of the high school experience and mindset. Overall, this novel was super relatable, and I felt like it was a perfect novel for this time in my lifetime. Going into a little more character study, Ellen and May have also been at the heart of a critical discussion. Originally, it was perceived that May had done the right thing by talking about her pregnancy in order to save her marriage. But I can also see where May can be seen as manipulative rather than sympathetically desperate. And Ellen also is subject for very modern literary criticisms just because of her boldness and her exoticness and something that's not super traditional in this New York societal norm. She's very different than the women in the book. And rather than focusing on this lavish lifestyle that Newland Archer had really not worked for at all, some of the modern readers identify with his grim outlook, and I can definitely see where that comes into play. Personally, I loved this novel. I felt May's weight to be perfect. I feel like that weight falls on every woman in this society. And I identified also strangely with Newland Archer and his grim outlook. I could definitely see when those modern readers could see that. Personally, I would have wanted a different ending. The end of the novel finds Archer nearly 30 years older. He's had a good life, done some good in the world, and is still living the life of New York gentleman. He arrives in Paris on a trip with his son, Dallas, and Ellen has invited them over, but just as they arrive at her building, Newland Archer decides not to go up to see her. Neither Newland nor Olenska is attached to anyone anymore. Times have become much more liberal and free. Why not finally enjoy the happiness that was denied them for so many years? And Newland still loves the Countess, but then sitting outside her building, Archer says, "It's more real to me here than if I went up." And he lingers over this mental shadow of reality. Archer is preserving the ideal image of Ellen that he has carried in his heart for decades, but he's also